Miami's 1-5. Deshaun Watson hasn't touched the field. These cases are still kind of pending right now, literally like a transaction. We have no idea what direction they're going. There's no break in the cases of leaning towards a settlement, going into putting him into jail time or an NFL suspension. So is this going to help or hinder Miami's ability to figure out what the hell's going on?
Well, I don't think it's really going to help in the short term, but I think it could help in the long term because whatever happens with Deshaun Watson off the field, which is, that's a shitload of cases that he's got to deal with. I mean, I think the guy is up to like 24 sexual assault allegations from up to like 20 to 25 women. Like, it's a lot of counts against him. But I think it's something that, by and large, he'll probably serve a suspension at some point. And then after he serves the suspension, he'll be good to go. So if you're looking at it from Miami's standpoint, you're probably going to play the long game in this one. You'll take the hit this year just because, let's be honest, the season's already kind of lost for Miami at this point. Tua's been out with injured ribs since early on in the season. Jacoby Brissett has played modest football, but it's not resulting in wins. And I just don't really see Miami going anywhere significant this year. They could potentially end up with a top 5 draft pick when it's all said and done. So when I look at Miami's front office, I can understand the appeal of going for Deshaun Watson simply because, okay, depending on how these sexual assault cases go, more than likely it's probably going to end in some sort of settlement. The NFL will probably suspend him for a certain amount of games. I don't know if they're going to suspend him for the entire season, but they're definitely going to suspend him for some off the field conduct policy issue. So I think Miami, if they just play this out long enough and they just kind of bide their time, I mean, they could potentially have a superstar quarterback when it's all said and done if this trade actually gets finalized. But Kevin, it's like the reports stated, though. There were a lot of people saying that this trade could be finalized by the end of the week. Well, we're already at the end of the week. And there really hasn't been any sort of major movement on saying, yeah, like there's a finalized trade piece or there's a trade deal going here. And it's more likely than not that we won't hear anything on this trade potentially involving Deshaun Watson until next week. So I don't know really how it's going to go. It's a tricky situation just because you don't know what's going to happen with Deshaun off the field. I think that's the most pressing issue at this point. But talking strictly about football here, if you have the chance to add someone like Deshaun Watson to the roster and you got to trade Tua to do it, I understand it. I definitely understand it from the X's and O's standpoint. But, the guy could get potentially suspended for what he did off the field. And if you're willing to take that hit, so be it. When he settles those cases, probably serves a suspension. I don't know how long it'll be. You got a potentially top 10 quarterback in the league. And I do think that it is a better option than what Tua currently presents for them. But that's pretty much how I see it. So, Kevin, I'll kick it to you from here.
So I'm looking at it a little bit more in the short term, right? Miami's 1-5. Tua Tagovailoa has not played a full NFL season. Brian Flores is coming off of a 10-6 season. The Miami Dolphins GM did not necessarily make a lot of moves. They let a lot of players walk in free agency, and they cut a lot of players to create cap. They had to go through the entire Xavier Howard situation this whole offseason. I mean, like you name it, they had a lot of problems from top to bottom organizationally. And I'm just looking at this like I'm trying to figure out what the hell happened from last year to this year. Now, for you to give up on a quarterback so young, somebody you've literally waited for basically the entireness of his career in Alabama, you were praying that he fell to you, and he did. To give up on him to go and get somebody that is literally not going to play for you for the foreseeable future, there's no indication of how long a suspension is going to be. There's no indication of when this stuff is going to be settled. So, okay, you pull the trigger hypothetically before the November 2nd trade deadline. What if Deshaun misses the rest of this season and all of next season? That is a year and a half that Tua could have been getting better, developing, getting more in tune with the offense. You could have had a coaching change. You could have had a personnel change. But you're taking a gamble on someone that may not touch the floor for the foreseeable future. It just doesn't make sense to me. Not to mention, it's not just going to be a quarterback swap. You're going to have to give up future assets because you are trading for the player, the potential of a top 5 quarterback in the NFL when healthy, and of course when available to play. So that they're going to have to trade away multiple first-round picks, maybe some personnel on their team, maybe Xavier Howard, maybe Byron Jones. I have no idea what the packages are going to be because obviously things have changed from the summertime to now. But I'm just looking at Miami's front office and saying this has got to be a joke. You're literally canning Tua, and you're just going to walk away from it and just say, well, we're just going to go get a guy that might not play for 2 years. To me, it doesn't make sense, both logically and then player-wise. What is trading Tua going to do? What if Deshaun Watson never touches the court again? What if the field again? Genuinely, what if those cases go and last for years and years and years? We're talking 20-plus individual cases. That's probably a lot of settlements. That's probably a lot of court dates. That's probably a whole lot of legal money and issues and a distraction. Do you really want to bring that baggage in? Tua's been hurt for the majority of his career anyway. So the games that he was available or on the roster, he was on the injured reserve. Is that necessarily completely his fault? Not really. The offensive line has been questionable for the last 2 years. They're not really established in the run. They have pretty much a committee back there. Devontae Parker has been in and out of the lineup, so your number one receiver has been pretty much inconsistent also. And then the defense has been god-awful this year. So the time of possession is skewed. So Tua's always playing from behind. Granted, they lost to the Jaguars last week, but he still had over 300 and some odd yards. He had 2 touchdowns. He had a bad interception, granted. It was an absolute atrocious play, but quarterbacks make that. When you don't have the experience, it's going to happen. So I'm thinking Miami's willing to throw the Tua experiment basically in the entire garbage for the potential of Deshaun Watson. If there was a date, if there was an estimate, if there was a timeline in this, I would say pull the trigger because then you have an idea of how long you're going to suck. But the fact that all of this is still basically in the winds and up in the air, it doesn't bode well with me to see that the front office and the organization is just going to give up on a player that fast.